Hello and welcome to
Hey, we like your pod.
And we're going to tell you why. Hi, it's Dawn here with the sniffles. My apologies in advance. And I'm joined, as always, by my trusted partner, Matt Pickett. Hi, Maddie. How are you doing?
We're doing pretty good. It's always fun recording on a Friday instead of on a Thursday because it's like this really nice way to wind down the work week for me over here in the Eastern time zone. So really happy to be here. Happy we're able to record since we weren't available last night to do it. And yeah, I'm in a good mood. Happy about the weekend. How about you, Dawn? How you doing?
Yeah, me too. I'm very happy, even though I have the sniffles, and I appreciate you rescheduling. And for those who were planning to watch us live last night, sorry about that. It was kind of short notice, but yeah, I'm on some new antibiotics, and that was not agreeing with me last night. But yeah, so it's good. I'm looking forward to the weekend. Jamie Cheesebutt, our favorite Packer fan, NFL fan up here in LA, has Pepe LaFleur, who of course was named for Matt LaFleur, the coach of the Green Bay Packers. And she is so happy, and they're doing very well. She had a bit of anxiety. And of course, cats have anxiety when they're moved and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Just the first day or two, but they are almost as if they've been together forever at this point.
Aww.
It's so nice. Really nice. Yeah. So our Packer family is happy over here, including Coach Pepe LaFleur. So I've been really busy with that the last month. We had to do quite a few things to get that together, but everything's in place, and she's so happy, and Pepe is so happy too, LaFleur. So I'm getting pictures every day. If you're following me on Twitter, I've posted a couple. I'll put some on Tasha's Instagram too. So that's cool.
Yeah, and if people don't follow you on Twitter, Dawn, what are they even doing? People follow Dawn on Twitter. Come on.
I don't tweet a whole lot, but lately I've been tweeting more about true crime than anything else. Not the true crime that is the Aaron Rodgers saga, but by the way, I just want to say
it's not crime yet. Brett Favre, on the other hand,
it's a crime the way he plays with everyone's feelings.
Fair enough.
I really, I know a lot of people are really anxious about that situation. I don't care, like, when it happens.
Mm-hmm.
It's June, and if I think there's reason to believe either right after June 1st or right before June 1st is the best for the Packers. So I want what's best for the Packers. Mm-hmm. That's all I care about.
Yep.
So I don't quite understand the anxiety about getting it done now.
I mean, draft picks for this year, I would love that. But if it's draft picks for next year, whatever.
Gotcha. Okay. Yes, that makes sense. Yes. I forgot about that. How could I have forgotten about that? I'm sick. I've been sick. And I know this is a day I'm looking at myself in the camera here, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm as white as a sheet.
It's just the lighting, Dawn. That's all it is.
I should have fixed the lighting. This would have been a day to just do a podcast, not a live stream. I didn't realize how sickly I looked. I felt sickly, but I didn't realize I looked sickly. So speaking of mock draft, draft, mm-hmm. Just a little slip of tongue.
You're ahead of yourself.
That's my superlative this week. It's mock draft time. So that's all I'm going to talk about, is because we participated, Matt and I, this year in another mock draft put on by the great Andrew Merktig and Maggie Loney and the Friday crew of the Pack-A-Day podcast, which breaks today.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait to hear it.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. I listened to it during lunch today, actually. And that was, sorry to interrupt here, Don. That was one of the reasons I'm glad we're recording on Friday instead of on Thursday, because I got a chance to actually listen to that episode before we recorded. But I digress. Go ahead.
No, that was it, that you didn't interrupt. And I just saw that it was posted earlier. And I was like, I thought it came out at Friday night. So I didn't think it was available just yet.
It
So
is, yeah.
I
It's a lot
can't
of fun.
wait. Tell us
Yeah.
everything. Okay, tell us everything.
Well, I mean, the episode, they start with doing some of the quick updates on other things, and they have to talk about the position that they're tasked with covering for the week. Because right now, Pack a Day is like every episode is like a couple of prospects that they're talking about. So they covered that pretty quickly, and then they got into talking through this mock draft. So do you want to, Don, talk more about like what this entailed and everything?
Sure. So a mock draft, that the way Andrew puts it on every year, and so this year is done. So if you want to keep an eye out on Andrew Mertig's Twitter page, he'll put up a notice that the mock draft excuse me, the mock draft is coming, and the first 31 or 32 people, however many teams there are, that reply to that tweet are in. And so it happens in just a matter of moments. So you got to get it while it's hot. And then what Andrew does and his team is they assign each person to a football team that you get to be their draft, their GM and their draft scouting team for the mock draft. And so I was assigned, for example, who was I assigned? I forgot. I'm so bad. The New Orleans Saints.
That's right.
And oh, how could I forget? I thought this was kind of funny. I think Andrew did this on purpose. He assigned me the Washington Commanders because I'm always up here talking about their legal troubles of Dan Snyder, at least. So I was assigned 2 teams. I'm not sure why I got 2 teams, but must not have been enough replies.
Might have been one person short, maybe. I'm not sure.
One person short. So I got 2 teams. So it follows, how they will fall in this year's draft. So I was number 7. I can't remember what the Washington Commanders were pretty high up because they didn't do super well last year.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then for the Saints, I had a harder time because for the Saints, they were way down in 29, I think, number 29. So, excuse me, the Saints really need a quarterback this year badly. And so I was not sure what to do, but I did notice that they had been hosting, I forgot his name already. I'm so sorry.
Was it Hendon Hooker? Is that who you said?
Hendon Hooker. Yeah. I was going to say Booker. I had him mixed up with Cory Booker. And I was like, oh, but there were some other quarterbacks that to me looked better. But what do I know? But I figured. So I was like, well, since they hosted this quarterback rookie draft prospect, I'm going to guess that that's who they want more than the others. As far as, but like there was one quarterback whose RAS score was 10.0.
What?
10, a perfect 10. And I was going to take him. And then I did a little research and I saw that Hendon Hooker was, even though he was farther down and he might have been able to go in the 2nd round or even the 3rd. Because I felt like because the Saints really do badly need a quarterback that they shouldn't wait until the 2nd or 3rd round. And I don't know if they had a 2nd round pick available this year. So, I mean, the executive decision. So that's kind of an example of how it works. Anything to add to that, Maddie?
Oh, yeah. I just add that I was the Tennessee Titans. And so I was picking at 11. And I picked I'm an O-line guy who was highly rated. So really, it was a tough call for me whether to do that or to go pull the trigger on Jackson Smith-Njigba, who I hope the Packers get. Very exciting slot receiver because the Titans do need help in the O-line and help with like some sort of weapons, basically, someone to throw to. Mm-hmm. So I did choose them, but still Jackson Smith-Njigba did get taken before the Packers could select somebody in this particular mock draft. But it's a lot of fun. It's a good chance to meet some other Packers fans. In fact, that's how we started to get to know each other, if I remember correctly.
That's right. That's right.
Huge fan of it. I really. And this is the 4th annual one they've done, and it was the 2nd one was where we had met, or they started to like kind of talk on the side and get to know each other. So they've done 4. I've done the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. We've both done the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th.
Right.
it's really cool that Andrew organizes this. It's a lot of fun. It's a good chance to dig into like what other teams needs are. So like
Right.
I mean, I don't know what the Tennessee Titans need, so it's like do some research,
Right.
see like you said, like who they're hosting, see what their
Mhm.
positional needs are, look at the sort of like draft boards to see like who are the highly rated prospects at the positions of need, like just all this kind of like research and digging into it. This different sort of lens is was so much fun. I really enjoyed it. And they even made a note on the show actually. I'd totally forgotten this, but last year's mock draft, I had the Giants and they were picking at 5 and 7 in the last draft. And I actually picked the people in the draft that they took in the actual draft in real life.
Oh
I just
wow.
had them like flip flop from 5 and 7, but still I
Oh,
was like,
I
oh,
love
I
that.
nailed
Yeah.
it. That's awesome. So who knows?
That's
Maybe this
fun.
year I'll get it.
That's fun.
I actually got it right 2 times ago in their second one because it was easy though, because I was picking for the Jaguars, and that's when they took that golden haired quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. It's like, what's his name? He's got the hair and the hair elastic. Trevor Lawrence, he was their obvious number 1 pick, so that was easy. But suffice to say, a lot of fun. Love that they do it. Thank you, Andrew, for hosting that, and of course Maggie and Kyle Fellows for also assisting with that. Big fun, good
It was
times.
big fun. And I just looked on my notes here. It was actually the Washington Commanders picked at 16. I don't know why. I thought it was higher up.
I couldn't remember where they were picking. Yeah,
I remember nothing. Like when I'm done with something, I'm like on to the next thing. My short-term memory is gone. Yeah, it was Washington Commanders, and they needed a cornerback, and we got Joey Porter Jr.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so I do, and you reminded me too that I really love this, not only, excuse me, to kind of rub shoulders with other fans, Packer fans who do this, but even though we do the whole league, it's not just Packers mock draft. I like to get to know the young ones coming up, the draftees, and where they go, and then when they play, if they play the following year, which some of them actually will go right onto the field, I like to watch. I feel connected. I feel more connected to the whole league this way, not just one team. So I enjoy that greatly. And I did a lot of research. And then when I looked at other people's picks, then I looked those guys up too. It's like, okay, who's that? So it's a great way to kind of expand your appreciation for all the work that goes into these guys and their families to get them to that position. I mean, from grade school to high school to college, to look at how many years they've finished. I like it when they graduate, but a lot of them this year didn't. They're second and third years. Yeah. I know after COVID, a lot of them had graduated. They just stayed on.
That's true. There are a lot of like 6th year redshirt kind of situations, and it's been kind of like twisted up a bit lately. And then also, with the money that college players can make now, I forget what the abbreviation is for that, but some of them like who would have come out in the draft, like now staying in college next year and make some money there. So it's a different landscape entirely.
Yeah. So that was a great week. And so I guess most of my time in terms of my football fandom was kind of spent doing that over the last week. So that is my superlative. Pack-a-day, Andrew, Maggie, and Kyle. All 4 of those are my superlatives for the week.
Very nice.
And of course, these draftees, of course, my Joey Porter. Now he's my Joey Porter Jr.
You're Joey Porter.
And my
and your hooker.
And my hooker. Hendon Hooker. Yeah. So what did you think? Have you followed anything about the quarterbacks being drafted up this year, or are you not paying that much attention?
No, I would say look, so kind of like to piggyback off of one last thought from your mega superlative is, it occurred to me as you're talking about it that one of the things I like about doing this with this group of people is that I'm taking in so much content and names across all the podcasts and articles and stuff like that, and now with some of the draft guides coming out, it's like there's just so much information overload, right? So doing something like this gives me the chance to actually like do something with it. It's more like learning through doing instead of learning through hearing, which you're gonna hear stuff, it's gonna come out your ears eventually. But actually like putting into practice, looking stuff up, looking up stats, looking at positional value, team needs, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff's much more like sticking with me now, and
Right.
part of that, I would say is like looking up the quarterbacks for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's easier for me at least, to keep track of who the top quarterbacks are, because they're, like the most discussed position, I think, by far, in terms of like just the media, production around the combine, or not the combine, rather the whole draft. The combine, yes, but the draft I meant. So it's like you hear a lot about them, about your CJ Stroud and Will Levis and Anthony Richardson and Hendon Hooker and Bryce Young. I couldn't think of his name for a second there, and all those guys on down from there as well. So I don't watch a lot of film, but I have watched some of the highlights of some of the quarterbacks and some of the receivers, because those are more fun, And there's some pretty exciting names coming into the league this year.
Yeah. I mean, I kept hearing that the quarterbacks was kind of a limited selection this year. That's not the word I'm looking for, but
not as much high-end talent, I think, is kind of how people tend to describe it.
That it is. Okay. So, well, that's interesting. Well, we have so many good young quarterbacks in the league right now. I mean, I love my Chargers quarterback, why is wrong with me? I can't think well, I know what's wrong with me. I've been taking cold medicine.
Pretty sure I was wrong. Yeah.
My brain. But yeah, I love that idea that, so you're reading all this stuff and it kind of goes in one ear and out the other. But if you hear these names enough times, sure, you might retain some of it, but actually applying it to something, it makes it real and more, hopefully even for me, more memorable. So I kept notes on the whole draft, but I think I stopped at 29. No, I got everybody here. No, I don't. I stopped at mine. I was tired. So I can't even remember now who the other football. Let me just look at who the other guy was that I was thinking of. I wonder if they'll bring it on. Let's see. Here it is. I was thinking, come here. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, Bryce Young, quarterbacks. We're still on quarterbacks. Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Will Levis. Is it Levis or Levi's?
I've always heard Levis, but I've never met him, so I'm just going on what I've heard.
Anthony Richardson, and then Hendon Hooker, Jaron Hall, Tanner McGee. I think Tanner McGee was the one who scored 10 on the RAS score.
No, Anthony Richardson.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I thought it was one of the ones that was
freak.
He's a freak. I thought it was one that was still left though when it was my turn, and he wasn't left when it was my turn.
I don't think more than one did, but I don't know for sure. Maybe.
I'll look it up.
Check it out.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I had a great time with it. And then I'm going to continue. I mean, first by listening to the Pack a Day today, kind of bringing it all back home. And then by listening to, I love that the Pack a Day podcast does this time of year, that we can learn about all these different players that are going to be in the draft so intimately just by listening to our Pack a Day podcast.
That's right.
And hello to Lorenzo in the chat. Nice to see you, Lorenzo. Did you do a mock draft this year, Lorenzo? Okay, Maddie. So, do you have some superlatives for us?
Yeah, I got 3 for us actually. So, let me see. My first one, speaking of Maggie Loney, is the podcast she does with Perry Goldstein. Packs What She Said is it's really one of the best Packers podcasts because they're both so smart, and their football minds are just impressive. I feel like I'm never going to be as smart at football as either of them, even on my best days. They are Maggie and Perry, just so smart. So anyhow, their podcast this week was them talking about like offensive prospects they'd like to think about. I think was the name of it. And so they talked about like some of the players they want to see on offense for the Packers, and kind of talking through some of the ins and outs. They had some sleeper picks, which is really interesting. So some of the names that you're not hearing people talk about as much, and just to hear that perspective that they have on like how these specific players would fit with the Packers was really, really great. It was a great conversation, a lot of fun as always with the two of them. And especially because like, again, hearing all these podcasts about like specific players and going into detail. Kind of like what they did there is they kind of like brought a lot of that information together and made it relevant for Packers fans. So really enjoyed that. That was a very good episode. Did you actually happen to hear that one, Dawn?
No, I didn't. I was paying attention to a big trial that's coming out. They're starting on Monday. So Katie and I were going back and forth about that. They were doing jury selection this week. So I kind of was preoccupied with that and Jamie's cat, Pepe LaFleur, Coach Kitty.
Well, between the two Maggie Loney podcasts of the week, between Packs What She Said from earlier in the weekend and this today's Friday Pack a Day, of course, as we're recording on Friday, those are the two best podcasts I listened to this week, actually. So double credit for Maggie on this.
For Maggie, and so glad that she's back. She's been back a couple weeks now, recently back from her maternity leave. Yes, those are going to be on my list tonight or this weekend for sure.
All right. So my second one is most impressive work. The Cheesehead TV draft guide dropped this week, and it is, as always, amazing. Mm-hmm. It is the work of so many people contributing their football knowledge into just a comprehensive guide to all of the top prospects out there, how they could fit with the Packers, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. And it is thorough. It is amazing. And so when I shout out one specific person, when I'm talking about this, it's with the full knowledge that a lot of people went into making this thing great. So I want to specifically shout out the editor-in-chief. We've talked about him like every week for like 3 months. Jersey Al.
Jersey Al. Yep.
The work that must go into organizing and assembling and, cultivating and editing and producing this thing is mind-boggling, and Jersey Al is at the center of all of it, getting this all done, making a thing for us Packers fans to really appreciate, to dig into the draft and really enjoy. So huge shout out to Jersey Al, huge shout out to all the people who contributed to the draft guide. People like our recent guest Brian Maffey, incidentally, is a side shout out to him. His article was like, I think it's called "You Are Not a Packer." So I do want to talk about that for a second. So this will be like a sub shout out for Brian here, because it was a really good article. What he did was looked at the Packers' typical thresholds for height, weight, size, agility drill scores, all those kinds of things, to see like, here are some really like well-known prospects people are talking about, and here's the argument for why the Packers are not going to take them based on their thresholds. So every now and then they'll go outside of those things, of course, but Brian wrote the article extremely well and laid out his arguments for why certain players won't be taken that other people might think are. And reading that gives you also a better understanding of like what the historical trends have been in the way how the Packers have drafted players. So like, it's a good, like, large scale kind of thing to understand the context, but then also small scale on some of the players. Will some of them be drafted by the Packers? Maybe, but it would be like definitely the exception to the sort of rules, if you will, that they've put out there in the past. Right. So, and Brian just killed it. It was really well written, really fun article to read, informative and interesting and entertaining. So high quality stuff from Brian.
Good for Brian. I'm glad he did that, and I need to read that because Andy Herman talks about the athleticism that the Packers generally require and that type of thing, especially during the draft. But it sounds like Brian actually lays out what that is in a better, in a more detailed way. So that's cool.
Yeah, it was giving more specifics and stuff like that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, it's really good.
Awesome.
All right. And Dawn, I have one more. So this is like a real sort of like, this episode is kind of a Friday Pack a Day love fest in a way, because my last one is going specifically to Andrew Mertig, whose names we've said like 50 times already on today's episode. He released a really cool resource that he compiles this week. It's called it's his let's get this right, his horizontal draft board is what he calls it. And so it is a very cool spreadsheet he makes, where he has the different sort of the way how it's set up. I'm just going to pull it over my other screen here. What it is kind of like it's got positions across the top of the spreadsheet, and coming down the side, it says like top 10, first round, late first, early second, second round, third round. And so then within the intersection of that, it's like, you want to know who's a good second round running back, who's running back will probably go in the second round. And he has like, the ones listed there. So, you're wondering like in the fourth round, who might people take as a tight end? And there's like 3 people there. He also has like notification or like, not notifications, but rather has, I'll just say it, like made, put in a bold type. Don, I don't know, I can't talk all of a sudden, but he bolded the names. My goodness, he bolded the names of the people who had a RAS score, which of course is a relative athletic score of 9.5 to 10, and underlined the prospects who have a RAS score of 9 to 9.49, so they kind of jump off the page in terms of like who are the really athletic, prospects here. So it is just like, as somebody who loves spreadsheets and has talked about his love for spreadsheets on the show frequently, and we both do, it's just such a good resource for like trying to better understand where these different prospects fit. And of course, this is based on, Andrew's own scouting that he does, his own rankings, his own, film work that he's done. So I also like that, like any draft resource, it's like you get to see a window into how a person who digs into the draft, like Andrew does, how they think, how they view the different prospects, what their opinions are on them. So just really, it's a lot of fun to dig into. I'm going to keep it open as a tab probably on my browser, my computer here until after the draft, just as a fun thing to go back and refer to.
I love that. And it's so generous that he shares that. I love it when somebody else share a spreadsheet, because something like that takes, some effort to put together and to share it. It's just awesome. And what I do with his is I take it and I embed it into my own draft spreadsheet tool.
Nice.
Which isn't very sophisticated. I know that sounded probably more fancy than it really is, but it's probably the best. It's probably the best worksheet that I have in there. But just to say, I like to refer to it as well. And every year I just like, oh, here it is. I can drop it into it. So then I feel like my whole thing is complete. And by the way, that's speaking of the RAS scores and what I said about quarterbacks. I said I would look it up. You were right, of course.
Oh,
it's Anthony Richardson was the 10.0. So my memory was a little faulty on that. Let me correct what I was saying. So I was mock drafting for the Saints, who need a quarterback, and they had hosted, and I'm still talking about this because it's like, did I do the right thing? I take this seriously. So, and we're going to find out in a few years, because we won't know right away how these people are. Sometimes it takes a few years.
I give it 3 or 4 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. So the second highest RAS score was Clayton Tune, who was still available.
Okay.
And he was 9.72. And then Tyson Bagent, Shepherd was his school, excuse me.
Yeah.
Was a 9.15, and then Tanner McGee was an 8.69. Now I liked Tanner for some reason. I can't remember anymore why. I wanted to take Tanner, and then I was like, but they didn't, as far as I know, they didn't host Tanner. So for their specific needs, which I'm not obviously that in tune to, I didn't do that much research to find out why exactly they liked him over the other 3 that were available still. So that I'm correcting myself. So that's what but yes, Anthony Richard was taken, and he was a 10.0. And I got that from the Packers Wire on USA Today, where they had the top RAS performers by category, by position. Yeah, by position from the scouting combine. So
that's handy.
Yeah, I love it. It was a great week.
It was a really fun week. Yeah.
Great week. Yeah.
Well done. Those are all of my superlatives, and I'm fresh out of thoughts. So there you go.
So no final thoughts for us, Maddie?
No final thoughts.
Okay.
Just keep enjoying this draft stuff. If you don't like it, then that's cool. It's not your thing.
Sure.
Step aside. All good.
Yeah. Some people like to check out until kickoff the next year.
I used to be like that myself. Yep.
Yeah. I don't think I was never like an in-between fan. I'm either all the way with something and wanting to know everything. Because I want to know the business side. I want to know the
Mhm.
scouting. I want to know what goes into it. I pay attention to the legal parts. I
Yeah.
just, I'm more of a holistic kind of person that way. If I like something, it's going to just usually not be superficial. But not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, no. You fan how
That's,
you want to, folks. Every one of you, fan how you
yeah,
want to.
fan how you want to. I love it. I love it. Well, Maddie, I hope you have a great weekend. Why don't you bring us on home and I will go back to
Yeah.
nursing my sore throat.
Here we go. So, friends, of course, you'll find links in our show description for everyone we mentioned. So please check it out. Also, we'd love to have a chance to interview you and shout you out if you're a subscriber and a football fan. My goodness, Don, we've had some great guests lately, huh? Don't
Oh
you
my
think?
gosh. I love our guests and we have some great ones coming up.
That's true.
Can we
If you'd like
name?
to nominate someone to be a guest in our podcast, please let us know. Our DMs are open on all the social platforms. And folks, when you subscribe to our podcast, you help us to keep spreading the love in our community. And the best way to help this podcast grow, the best way, Don,
The
to help this
best way.
podcast grow.
I love
It'd be
it.
cool if our podcast grew a little bit more. I don't know. To help
It
our
would.
podcast grow is by
Nice.
sharing it with your friends and family.
Yes, Maddie, that's right. We love you. We're so
Mhm.
glad to know you, to be fans of you, and to have the luxury of being fans of the most storied team in the NFL.
Mhm.
We appreciate your support, your subscriptions, and sharing our pod. And we look forward to seeing you next week on.
Hey, we like your pod.
Football in general comes down to discipline and people owning their roles. And when you aren't disciplined or you go outside the scheme, bad stuff happens.